everybody, welcome back to the channel. So I'm just on my way to feed the ducks and spend the afternoon in one of the parks near my house, and I wanted to take this opportunity to talk to you a little bit and respond to some of the emails that I've been receiving about concerns around starting medical school, either as a mature student or as a non-traditional student this September. What I've tried to do during the last 12 to 18 months is make videos to try and guide and inspire people to start medical school. And what's happened is some of those people received offers, which is amazing, from Bristol and other medical schools. Now I'm receiving emails to say, okay, I have this offer, but the reality of starting and moving and how my financial situation is going to change and all of these factors has now really set in. Should I be moving forward with medicine? And I can 100% understand where you're coming from, 100%, especially if you're a mature student and you've had a full-time wage, or your partner is settled and you're maybe thinking about having a family, or you don't want to move away from your parents. Like, there's so much to think about, isn't there? So what I wanted to do in this video today is really go back to those emails and reread some of the questions or the concerns and try to guide you, or try to maybe tell you how I overcame the same obstacles. So things like finances, where to live so that you're not spending all of your student finance on rent, for example, how to overcome concerns about being smart enough, how to learn all of the content as a mature student. There are so many things to think about before starting medical school. However, what I would say is, if you feel 100% that this is what you're meant to be doing in life, the reason that you got an offer is because you're on the right track. So don't let any obstacles that you may be thinking of right now stop you from achieving that goal. I started medical school, as you know, at 37, and I've managed to work along the way, pass all of my exams, and I'm now just about to go into 4th year. So I'm not saying that to brag, or I'm not saying that to say it's easy, but I really want to say that if you put the hard work and you have the determination, then you can absolutely get through this degree. So I'm going to get to the spot where I'm going to feed the ducks and have a sit down, and then we'll get into the video properly. I just want to show you before I start filming how I've anchored my camera to film this. I've actually just wedged it, so I'm sorry if the angle is not perfect, but I'm just doing my best to make this video for you today. So I'm going to put the timestamps in the description box below. So the first concern, and understandably so, is around finances. So when I first started medical school back when I was 37, beforehand I had a full-time job and I was working in Dubai for 7 years. So to go from having either a business or a full-time wage to then transitioning as a mature student or as just a non-traditional student to student finance is tough, but it's doable. And I think this is how we know whether being a doctor is something that is just a nice thought. So, oh, it would be nice to be a doctor, but then the reality sets in and the sacrifices that we have to make set in, and then we decide not to move forward. And then there are people who are willing to do whatever it takes to become a doctor. And I think when you start to really look at what you're going to have to sacrifice, that's when you know if it's the right decision for you to move forward or not, if that makes sense. I want to help you to overcome any concerns that you have, hopefully tell you that if you're concerned about finances, then don't be. But as you watch this video, really have a good think about, is this something that I really want? Because I don't want to give you guidance and advice and say move forward with this, everything will be fine. If it's something that you actually don't really want to pursue, make sure that it is, because although these obstacles can be overcome, studying as a mature student, whether it's medicine or something else, when you take all of the factors into account, it's really challenging. It really is, but very rewarding at the same time. So finances, I didn't have any savings when I started. I never have had any savings, to be honest with you. So I was reliant on working as well as studying medicine. And I have to say, at Bristol, and I don't know whether it's the same at other medical schools, but for the first 2 years, it was absolutely fine. I was working as a nursing assistant at the BRI. So for the first 2 years, I was teaching 6 or 7 spin classes a week and working as a nursing assistant at the hospital. And then I started to do online personal training as well. Third year is a little bit more tricky because you're on the wards pretty much 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. So the only opportunity that you have to work would be weekends and evenings. So in third year, I decided to quit my spin classes and I set up an online personal training business, so it would give me more flexibility with regards to the hours I was working. And I was also doing nursing assistant shifts at weekends. And for 2 months out of the year, so I think it was from March until April this year, I was working Saturdays 6 hours and then Sundays 12 hours. And you can have a look at the videos that I posted about that. And I talked a lot about mindset because I didn't want to do those shifts a lot of the time. It was a lot, but I kind of had to change my mindset around that. So I will link that video in the description box, and it kind of just talks about how I make myself do all the things that I don't want to do. And sometimes working weekends as well as studying medicine is really, really challenging. But just to try to put your mind at rest, it will be difficult to go from a full-time job where you have a really comfortable wage to student finance and then having to work in a job that probably pays a lot less than what you're earning now for the sake of being on this course. But I know many medical students, including my closest friend Amber. She works as well, and she managed to also sustain this job in third year, which is 2 days a week working in a lab. I have other friends who do part-time jobs, you know, the same as a nursing assistant, other medical students who work in care homes as well, or they do work with the university. So there are ways, if you're alone and if you don't have support, of getting through the degree whilst having to work as well. I probably wouldn't recommend working any more than part-time, so 16 to 20 hours a week maximum. And I think it's just important to check in with yourself as you're on the course and as you're working to say, okay, do I feel burnt out? Do I feel tired? Okay, if that's the case, I need to pull back a little bit and take some time off. And I did that quite a few times, especially during third year. So that's the first point. If you're worried about finances, it probably will be a little bit of a shock to the system to go from a full-time job to student finance and working part-time, but it's doable. Question that I got was around accommodation. This was a little bit tricky for me during the first year, I would say, because when I got the offer for Bristol, it was approximately 6 weeks before the start date. It was really late, and I was living in Solihull, which was around a two-hour drive. And although I was ready to go and I didn't want to defer a year, I really wanted to try and stay where I was, living in Solihull, and then trying to commute from Solihull to Bristol,
because I couldn't really find anywhere in Bristol that was affordable. And I'm not really, because I'm so introverted, I don't really feel that comfortable living with a bunch of students, especially because I knew that they would be pretty much, you know, 17, 18 years younger. And I thought, you know, my party days are pretty much over. I don't really want to be going out until 4 in the morning anymore. And I just wanted to kind of live by myself, and I just loved living in Solihull because I had a maisonette and I had a little garden for Clara. It was perfect. So for the first 6 weeks, I was basically commuting from Solihull to Bristol. And intuitively, and I could see why now, but I felt like I shouldn't move. And I didn't know, obviously, that just a few months down the line, COVID-19 would hit and everything would be online. So I could have stayed in Solihull, to be fair. But logically, I thought, no, I just have to move. So I found a house, not in Bristol, but in a place called Portishead, which is where I live now. Not in that house, but in a flat. And the rent was around £200 more a month. But I thought, at least I'm not going to have to spend £300-400 on petrol, and I'm going to be saving a lot of time as well. So this is a logical decision. So it was tricky to get by myself because I didn't have a full-time wage, and I didn't have, you know, a spouse or parents that could sign. So I actually had to pay Housing Hands, who are a guarantor company. So I paid them about £400 to be guarantor for me because I was a full-time student. And I lived in that house for approximately 6 months out of the 12-month lease. And then when COVID hit and we were told at the end of first year pretty much that we could all go home and we didn't need to be in Bristol, and I thought, well, second year is going to be online, I moved back to Solihull. When the hospital basically explained to us that they needed medical students to come in and work as nursing assistants, I then made the decision to go back to Bristol. And I then found a flat which was in Bristol, which was mega expensive. I mean, I think I was paying £875, but this was for a tiny studio in Clifton, but 5 minutes away from the hospital. And I only stayed there for a few months, and then I made the decision once again to move back to Portishead, and I've been living in this flat that is also online. I did an apartment tour if you want to have a look, and I pay £800 a month for a 1-bed flat, which is about 20 minutes out of Bristol. I live by myself. I'm lucky enough to live by myself, and yes, I may have to do a little bit more work than other people to be able to afford the rent, but I'm not willing to sacrifice that peace of mind, or just me having the opportunity to live in a flat, because I need that for my own sanity really. And there was a time before second year where I had a conversation with 2 medical students that I get on really well with about living with them, but again, I just had concerns around not having enough quiet time, and would Clara be okay, and for the sake of £200 more a month I could live by myself. So it's been a no-brainer. So once again, I share that with you because although the rent that I'm paying now is more expensive than what I was paying in Solihull or wherever I've lived before, apart from Dubai, that was mega expensive, it's been okay. And yes, I've received support from the university and student finance, and I've had to work, but you can live by yourself if you prefer. There are many websites such as spareroom.com. I would avoid one company that doesn't have great reviews called Digs, D-I-G-S, but many estate agents will allow you to rent by yourself as long as you have a guarantor. So the company I used once again was called Housing Hands, and they were brilliant. They communicate with the agency that you're renting from, and you sign a few forms, you pay the fee, and then they act as guarantor. Now I'm lucky enough, because I'm in my 3rd year of renting this flat, my landlady hasn't required a guarantor from me this year or last year, because I pay the rent on time. So within the first 2 years you have to have your own accommodation. Remember, that you don't have to live in Bristol city centre. Some of the most common areas that you'll hear about are places like Clifton and Redland, and unless you're living with 3 or 4 people, they're just mega expensive, and you don't actually have to be in Bristol to go to lectures. You can live in places like this, Portishead, people live in Weston-super-Mare, in Clevedon, and then you can just get the bus in. Parking is really tricky in Bristol if you're coming here to study, so I would definitely suggest using one of the park and rides. So this was one of the questions as well. I normally go into Long Ashton Park and Ride, or Portway, which is about 15-minute drive from my house, and then I pay £1.10, I think it is, for a student pass for the day to go into Bristol. They stop at the Triangle and then I just walk up to the BRI. So it's so much easier, and parking in Bristol, normally in the residential areas, you can only park for 3 hours and it's around £5. So it will just cost you a fortune. Again, I wouldn't sacrifice your mental health or happiness just for the sake of saving a couple of £100 a month. I would just find somewhere that you really like and stay there if you can for the 5-year degree, because once again, medicine is so stressful that at the end of the day you want to come home and feel safe, and you want to feel comfortable in your own home. So I think it's always worth spending a little bit more money to make sure that you're happy where you live. The next question was around learning content, and the question said something along the lines of, how did you know that you would be able to learn all of the content necessary in order to pass exams, basically? And I think that was always a concern of mine, even from the get-go. You know, I talked about this in my very first video around GCSEs, and I said to myself, I don't even know if I'm smart enough to get an A in a GCSE. I didn't know, but I think the only way to know and to find out what we're capable of is to do it and to see, and I've been amazed. I've been amazed at how much I've been able to retain and to learn and to achieve. I honestly didn't think that I would be able to get the grades at GCSE. I didn't think that I would be able to get the grades on the Access, and I don't think I believed that I'd get to where I am now, you know, passing OSCEs and the written exam in 3rd year. You will have concerns, you will have doubts, but it's just a case of moving forwards. And the thing is, and you'll hear this on YouTube and from loads of medical students, I'm sure, when people say medical school is not that hard, in terms of the content, what I mean by that is the content is not that complicated, but the amount that you have to retain, that's where the challenge lies. And my good friend Simon, who now studies at Warwick, he's passed his 1st year, so congratulations, Simon, again. I mean, don't get me wrong, there are some concepts that are a little bit tricky to get your head around, but what I found the most difficult was definitely, and what I still find difficult, is just getting to grips with how much you have to remember. But there are so many, you know, techniques that you can use to help you retain the information. So I use Anki, which you'll probably see a lot on my vlogs, which is a flashcard app, completely free, and I just write my own questions and do those every single day. And then I use question banks such as Past Test. I've scrapped PastMed, so now I use Past Test, QuizMed and Geeky Quiz, and I just do questions every single day. So I think it is harder, I'm not gonna pretend that it's not, but I think, yeah, I don't know if there's a certain age where it's just more difficult to retain information, but I definitely have to go over the content many times to be able to retain it, and I'm not embarrassed to say that. And it paid off, because You know, I passed my end of year exams in 3rd year. So just going over the content again and again. And the thing is, there is so much support at the university. So if there is something that you don't understand, you can ask one of the lecturers or ask one of the consultants. If you don't feel comfortable doing that, there are some really good books. Obviously, I'm going to recommend Zero to Finals. Not that I'm sponsored by them, but I just love their content because I like when things are bullet points, you know. This is the condition, these are the symptoms, this is the medication, blah blah blah. Like, it's just bam bam bam, and that's how I learn. So Zero to Finals, it's just so straight to the point. So if you're worried about during your clinical years, not so much during years 1 and 2, but if you want some really good resources, Zero to Finals books, if you don't want to buy them, just use the website, it's completely free. And get yourself Anki or Quizlet, and then invest in some question banks like QuesMed. The reality is you can't just rely on notes at medical school. There's just no way. There's too much content to be able to just reread notes. You won't remember it, and I'm not saying that because I don't, but I tried that in 1st year and I failed my very first exam. It just doesn't work, and every single medical student that I know and who does well uses question banks. So don't worry again about not being able to retain the information. I always have this expression where I say, if somebody else has done it, then you can do it. If it's been done, then you can do it, because that's the case, that's the truth. One of the questions was how many other mature students are on your course. So I go to Bristol Medical School, and in our year group I think there are around 250, 260 medical students. It's really difficult to tell, but from what I used to see in the lectures in year 1, I think that there were around 30 medical students, 30. So you won't be alone. I definitely used to hang around a lot more in year 1 with a lot of the medical students, and then obviously because of COVID, everybody was stuck at home. But I've become really, really good friends, obviously, with Amber, who you'll see again on the vlogs. So don't worry about that. Again, that was definitely a concern of mine. You know, will I be alone? Will I be the oldest? And I am, but that's okay. And it doesn't really bother me. And the thing is about being a mature student, you will learn a lot from the younger students. I have learned a lot. Some of them, you know, I don't have much in common with, but I didn't expect to, because there's a 20-year age gap, and that's okay. But in terms of learning and studying, because they are very academic, and how they prepare, I don't know, spreadsheets and graphs, and how they do literature reviews, you know, I've learned so much. So don't see them as, you know, it's them and us, as in like mature students and younger students. And there are some mature students, sadly, who will just alienate themselves and not even interact with the younger students. But I've met some really lovely, you know, younger students who I hope to stay friends with. And I don't really feel the age gap in, I mean, sometimes I do, don't get me wrong. Every single year we're put into a group of 7 or 8 students for CBL, and every single year I've been put in a group where I am the only mature student. For the first 2 years I was in the same group, and most of it was done online, again because of COVID, and I was never made to feel like the odd one out, ever. And then in 3rd year I was at the BRI and Bath, and I was the only mature student, and again it was absolutely fine. So don't be concerned, bring your skills. And I think we as mature medics have a lot to give, and we have a lot to teach as well, you know, in terms of how to communicate with patients and how to show empathy, and just use our life experience to even give advice and give support to maybe those younger students who are struggling. I remember, you know, when I was 20, 21, and you feel a little bit, maybe, I don't know, insecure, or you don't really know how to navigate relationships, or I don't know, it's nice to be able to be there sometimes if somebody's crying and say, look, yeah, I experienced the same 20 years ago. Let me just give you a hug, make you a cup of tea, and we'll have a chat. It's nice to be able to do that. So yeah, don't feel like you don't belong is the point. Is around feeling selfish because you're asking your partner to leave their job and to move house in order for you to fulfill your lifelong dream of becoming a doctor, and you feel a lot of guilt. This one I can't relate to in the sense that this happened because when I decided to study medicine, and for the last many years I've been single, so I've never really had to negotiate or convince anybody that, you know, I wanted to move, and it does make things easier, I would say, but then you don't have that support, that loving support from a partner. So each one has its pros and cons. But what I would say is, again, if that person is in a relationship with you and loves you, they will want the best for you. And if becoming a doctor is your life purpose and your calling, and if it's something that you've been talking about, you know, for 5-10 years, and you've got this once in a lifetime incredible opportunity, they're not going to want you to miss out on it, you know. So I would say, don't feel guilty, and understand that if they were in a position where they had an offer for something in a different city or abroad, I know that you would be the kind of person to support them 100% and say, yeah, go for it. You know, I love you and I want you to be happy. Let's do it together as a team, you know. So it is a bit of a tricky one for me to answer, only because I can't talk from experience and say my partner was supportive or this, that and the other, but from the little that I understand from relationships, because I'm certainly not an expert in this field, but I think that partners and couples should be like a team, and if one person has a goal or a dream, then if it's the right relationship, then the other person should support you regardless of how out there or how crazy that goal or that dream is. And I know that in the past I've received emails from people who have said, you know, I've decided not to pursue medicine because my partner has told me that if I did, that they would leave me. For me, that is the essence of an unhealthy, codependent relationship. I always think that partners should push us to become our best selves, even if it means that, you know, they have to compromise on where they live or the job that they do. If it's a case that somebody is saying to you, if you do this, I will leave you, then honestly, from the bottom of my heart, I would say that's probably not the healthiest relationship to be in. Also, for the first 6 months, really intensely, as if the medical school had made a mistake and I was about to receive a letter or a phone call at any minute to say, no, we got the wrong Rebecca, you're not actually entitled to a place here. It's constantly on edge, awaiting for something to happen, and it didn't. And then in second year, I thought, okay, I have to start believing that I'm worthy of being here, and that even if my past and my background and my age are different, it doesn't mean to say that I'm not going to be a good doctor, you know. So in second year, I made the decision to speak to a therapist, and I stayed with her for 8 months, and I had weekly sessions, and it helped me to build my self-esteem and just increase the amount of self-love that I had for myself. And I realised now that my background and my age are my biggest strengths, because they allow me to, again, show so much empathy and bring my life experience to the table and really relate to patients on a deep level, which is something that I wouldn't have been able to do at the age of 20 years old. And I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with starting medicine at a younger age, but the counselling definitely helped me shift my mindset around worthiness and knowing that I could be a good doctor even if nobody in my family had been a doctor. You know, it didn't really matter. And when people asked me, what is your background and what do your parents do, then I didn't need to be ashamed to say, you know, my dad was this and my mum was this and I grew up in care, for example. There was no shame. And if you experience, or if you think that you're going to experience imposter syndrome, from my experience with it in the first year, and still sometimes now a little bit, came down to knowing that I was also worthy of being on the course. So what do we need to work on when we feel imposter syndrome? Self-esteem and self-worthiness and self-love. That's it. That's where it comes from. Knowing that you are worthy, just the same as everybody else, to be on that course, and you've worked hard to pass the exams to get on the course, for example the UCAT and maybe an access course or GCSEs. You've put in the graft, you've done the hard miles, and you have what it takes. If you've had MMIs or a face-to-face one-on-one interview, the reason that you've been accepted is because they see that you have the potential to become a kind, caring, efficient doctor. So believe in yourself and do what you have to gain that confidence and that self-esteem so that you can enjoy the course more. Because whenever you go into a lecture or a CBL group or a clinical environment and you have this heaviness of imposter syndrome, it does take a lot of the joy away from being on the course. So try to seek help. You can again go through the university when you start and maybe ask for some long-term counselling, or you can start the process now before going to medical school. Whatever feels more comfortable for you, do that. And I think just know that you have what it takes to succeed. And although there are so many obstacles that will pop up along the way, you have everything that it takes within you to overcome them. Is during the course of the degree, and maybe add on an extra 2 years for the access course and GCSEs, for example, so let's say 7 years. Just bear in mind, and this is something that I didn't even think about when starting, but lots of things are going to happen in your life and also in your family's life and in your friends' lives over the course of that time frame. One of the people in our community also said, I'm about to start this journey and I'm this age and I'm seeing all of my friends having kids and I feel like I'm behind. You know, if you think about it this way, you're deciding to become a mature student and you're going down this path, and your friends are on a completely different timeline. They're deciding to have kids and they've got a full-time job. You can't compare the two. You just can't compare. And if you're looking at somebody else's life and wishing that this is what you were experiencing instead of medicine, then have a really good think about, okay, do I really want to do medicine? And I can only say this from experience, but if you would have offered me back then when I got the offer a different choice, whether that be traveling or you know, a lump sum of money or anything else, the decision or the answer would have been no. All I want is to start this medical degree. All I want is to become a doctor. And there was no doubt. There was no other option of, oh no, actually I want to do this instead. I was 100% sure that this was the path that I wanted to take. And I'm not saying that every single person has to be 100%, maybe you're 98, 99%, but one thing to, I think, bear in mind is just if you're looking at other people and wishing that you had that life, so rather than studying medicine and being broke for 5 or 6 years and living somewhere where you don't really want to live, for example, and you're looking at other people and you think, oh, they've got a full-time job and they've got a beautiful house and a beautiful family and they're living in London and I want to stay in London, then maybe it's not the right career. And this whole channel, of course, is to try and guide and support those who want to change their lives and do something like medicine. But I never want to push people in that direction if it's not the right thing for them, because you'll regret it. You will regret it, because this is the hardest thing that I've ever done. And I think if it's not something that's really within your heart, then don't do it. Honestly, don't do it. And I never thought I would say that on my channel. I always want to encourage people to push themselves out of their comfort zones, and but if you really think, or if you really feel hesitant about making these sacrifices, and if you're looking at somebody else's life and thinking, actually I'd prefer that, do it. Don't do medicine. And there's nothing wrong with changing your mind, even if you've had an offer, for example, from Bristol or from another medical school and it's now July and you're due to start in September. There is absolutely no shame in going back on your decision and saying, actually, now that I've looked at all of the sacrifices that I'm going to have to make and thinking about how long the journey is going to be, it's not sitting right and it's not really resonating with me. I think I'm going to stay where I am. There's nothing wrong with that. There's no shame in doing that. You've got to do what is best for you and never feel any pressure just because you have an offer and maybe it's something that you wanted to do a few years ago. If it's not in line with your values and who you are anymore, then you can say no. And I think saying no is a big part of, having boundaries. And don't start this journey if it's not 100% what you want to do, because it's too long and it's too hard to get through if it's not something that you really want with your entire heart and soul. So I'll leave it there for today. If you do have any other questions that you'd like for me to answer, please do so in the comments. I haven't been able to respond to many emails recently and I apologize for that. But if you want to know why, go and check out the videos that I posted about Greece and about Maria, who is a rescue dog that is coming back to the UK at the end of August. But I'm going to try and post as many videos about medical school as I can. The next video that I'm planning to record, and I'm still trying to get my head around how to phrase it without looking like I'm bragging about grades or anything, but I think it will be a really helpful video for those who are already in medical school. And it's about how I improved my grades by 21% in 6 months. But again, I've always been a little bit reluctant to talk about grades, and I always think it comes across as a little bit, arrogant, and I never want to come across like that. But at the same time, I think it would be a really useful video to post. So I'm still trying to kind of figure out how I'm going to word it to not come across as arrogant in any way at all. But thank you very much for watching. Like I said before, I'm trying to grow the channel and it's growing, but very slowly, and I really want to get the number of subscribers up. So if you watch the videos but if you haven't subscribed, it takes 1 second. Please go and do that now. Help me to grow the channel. Like the video, leave a comment, and I'll see you very soon. Take care.